So, learning theories then, we incorporate several learning theories within this specification. First ones we're going to look at are arousal theories and how these influence performance in particular. There are three theories that you need to be mindful of, and not only do you need to know what these theories imply, but you also need to be able to evaluate them, so see their strengths and see their weaknesses. So what is this term arousal? Now, in the previous video, we talked about the direction of a behaviour towards a goal, and the drive towards a goal, the intensity of the behaviour. And actually, arousal talks about that intensity of the behaviour. So this is the physiological state that drives us: alertness, anticipation, getting us ready to do something or to perform or to learn. So arousal is the intensity of a behaviour towards a learning direction or towards learning a skill. It's very much linked to the energized state that drives us to perform a skill, so that again that ties in with our previous video. And our body's all about homeostasis, so we want to achieve balance, we want to have things that are consistent, and if we're put under stress or something's making us anxious, then that will change our state, that will change our level of arousal. We need to try to reduce that if we can. Now there are two types of arousal: physiological arousal, proper term is somatic arousal, so this is what our body does, or how our body shows our level of arousal, and it can be things like heart rate, blood pressure, breathing faster. And you know, if you're motivated towards something, you might have elevated heart rate. Even before maybe you go on the pitch, you might be aroused to go on and play, and you might have elevated heart rate. The other type of arousal is cognitive arousal. Now you should know that something cognitive tends to talk about your brain and how your mind might be working. So this is the psychological element of arousal. Cognitive or psychological arousal relates to the mind, and it could be worry, it could be negative thought, it could be positive thought. This is very changeable. So here's an exam question that came up just for 2 marks, acknowledging the level of arousal affecting a performer, and it just asks you to define the term arousal. So we've got intensity, aspect of motivation, level of motivation, the drive to achieve a goal, energized state. That's a nice easy phrase to associate with arousal, the energized state, and it can, acknowledging that it can be cognitive and somatic. So a couple of marks there for pretty much saying what arousal is. As I said, you have 3 theories to learn: drive theory, inverted U theory, and catastrophe theory. And don't forget, you've got to consider the advantages and the criticisms of each of those 3 theories. So let's start with drive theory. Now this is the graph. It would be really helpful if you learnt this graph. Pretty straightforward though, 2 axes and a diagonal line. Now this axis, the x-axis, is the degree of arousal that is occurring, and the vertical axis, you sometimes see it as dominant habit and you sometimes see it as quality of performance, so be mindful of that. And what this basically implies is that as arousal goes up, the quality of your performance go up. It's also more specifically not just your quality of your performance, but you're more likely to perform the dominant habit, the dominant skill you've learnt. So as arousal goes up, you're more likely to perform your dominant skill, the habitual skill, and which in theory implies that the quality of your performance should go up. And we need to understand that this is a proportional relationship. So the performance will increase proportionally as arousal increases. Oh, this equation here, performance equals the habit times the drive. So your motivation, your drive, your arousal times your habit will relate to your performance being really good. However, this theory shows there's a relationship between arousal and performance. The more aroused you are, the better you perform. It also recognises and suggests that the increase in arousal is proportional to increase in the quality of performance. The more aroused you are, the better you perform. However, the quality of the performance does depend on how well a skill has been learned, and your dominant response is likely to be performed if you are more aroused. Now, we have to think critically of this theory. So it says that when drive or arousal increases, the quality of performance will increase. Now, I'm not sure that I can agree with this totally, and there are some criticisms of this. So it's not just about being more aroused and playing better. If the learned response or your habitual response is incorrect, so if you're a beginner and you haven't quite mastered how to serve properly, and you get more aroused, the chances are you'll play that unlearnt skill. You'll not perform this brilliantly. So if you're a beginner in particular, if you're a cognitive learner, what this suggests then is you need lower levels of arousal to play well. You don't want to be stressed out. You don't want to have loads of people watching you, or loads of pressure on you to play your best. If you're more experienced, however, and your habitual response is the correct technique, you've done it so much it's overlearned, then actually you're able to have higher levels of arousal and you'll perform your skill better. So this theory doesn't really work for beginners, doesn't really work for cognitive learners. It might be more acceptable for experienced learners, but that's not entirely true. We know that even elite performers can mess up. They will be highly aroused and they cannot perform their skill better. So here's an exam question, 2 marks. Use drive theory to explain how arousal affects a performer, both a novice and an experienced performer. And it's essentially what I just said. Novice performer, if there's increased arousal, will not play as well, whereas an experienced person can improve. Moving on then, inverted U theory, Yerkes and Dodson. This looks like an inverted or an upside down U, and we need to know how arousal relates to performance in these 3 kinds of positions: the start, the peak, and the end. So we need to be able to describe what's occurring at A, B, and C. Now, A is down here, low levels of arousal, moderate levels of arousal is B, and high levels of arousal is C, and how this equates to what's going on with the performer's actions and skill. Now at A here, it suggests that up to a point, so as arousal increases up here, performance might increase a bit. We get a bit better. That's okay. Right at the start here though, at A, where arousal levels are very low, performance is also very low. You can see our performance is highest here at B, and actually prior to that, levels of arousal are quite low, and we would describe this as the performer being under aroused. At this point they can't concentrate, they're not focused enough, and they have a very wide attention field. What that means is they can't selectively attend the right cues they're looking at, they're distracted by stuff going on around them, so they're all over the shop with their concentration. They're essentially not psyched up enough. So here performance is low, and we are under aroused. We're not sufficiently aroused to focus and to play our best. At the other end though, at C, we're very highly aroused. So this is the top end of arousal. You might describe this as being over aroused. So C, there is a point when arousal turns to anxiety and the performance deteriorates. We have too narrow attention field. There's important phrases here. Hypervigilance. If the performer is hypervigilant, they're overwhelmed. They are in blind panic. They're psyched out. They're just so focused on one thing. They can't concentrate on the other important things going on around them. So they're too narrow attention field. So we've got extremes, too wide at A and too narrow at C. Obviously then, up here, B, where we can see performance as at its highest, we have the optimal level of arousal, and we would describe this as moderate levels of arousal. So A is not good, we're under aroused, we're performing badly, we're too distracted with a wide attention field. C, we're over aroused, we're not playing well, we're underperforming. It's too narrow attention field, we're psyched out. And B is our optimal good level of arousal, moderate levels of arousal, where we can hopefully perform our best. So low here, inactive, laid back, not concentrating, not energized enough. High here, over stressed out. Here we become anxious, freaked out. This could be what you feel like in a really intense competition, in a final. You might be panicked, you might be overzealous, you might become violent, you're over aroused here. And B is our optimal level of arousal, where we play our best. So at B, the attention field is an ideal width. We can concentrate. We're not underwhelmed. We're not overwhelmed. It's perfect. Concentration is high, so we can absorb the right information. We can make decisions comfortably, and we can selectively attend the important cues going on around us. We can focus on the right thing. This also is called cue utilization hypothesis, where we've got this optimal level of arousal. We can pick out the important cues. So we notice the ball coming, we notice our teammate coming, we notice the defender there. We're not just too focused on one thing or not noticing any of it. But this still doesn't account for what goes on with performers when they totally mess up. Going back to the image, once we become slightly highly aroused, or from this optimal level onwards, what inverted U suggests is that there's a gradual decline in performance. You very gently get worse. And that doesn't really explain what goes on with some of our performances. So, for example, England in the penalty shootouts, we tend to, really dramatically mess up. We may have been playing well, and then it comes to the penalty situation, and performers who are skillful just totally mess up. So inverted U doesn't account for those disastrous performances. Just a few slides really to reiterate what perceptual narrowing is. It's the inability of a performer to focus on the right cues. We focus on wrong things. We reduce what we can focus on. We take in not enough sometimes, and the result is bad decision making, blind panic, and poor concentration. So this is just a visual really. These are all the things where we are concentrating, we're able to pick out good information, we're able to filter out irrelevant information. But when we become more aroused, we aren't able to do that. We just detect information. We don't filter properly. This is just again an analogy that might help you understand the attentional field. So I've used a wide angle lens that you might have on a camera, which obviously has a wide view, perhaps too wide a view, and this might represent what's going on at A, where we're under aroused. We take in loads of stuff. We might be distracted by other things beyond the important things. At the other extreme, C was being too narrow, having too narrow focus. And this is what happened when we were over aroused. If we zoom in too much on one thing, we miss a lot of information. That could be the blind panic. And ideally, we have this normal lens, which focus has an optimal level of range or focus, and this is our optimal arousal, which was at B. So just to finish then, some key terms: attention field, the area with which we are aware of, and this can be narrow or broad or optimal. Concentration, focusing on the right cues in the environment, so the person coming towards us, the ball coming towards us. Hypervigilance, what occurred at the over-aroused end of inverted U, when we're nervous or panicked and we're very anxious, we have heightened awareness, not necessarily of the right thing, so we can't concentrate, we're too freaked out. And cue utilization, the process of focusing on the most important information or cues from the environment. And we would have this cue utilization in that optimal level, that middle level at B, where we're able to take in the right information, selectively attend what we focus on, lose the irrelevant stuff, and hopefully perform our best.